What's going on, everyone? So I kind of want to give my update about PlayStation 5 after 5 years in. There's some stuff to talk about in this video that we got to kind of take our time with. Starting off is with the year 2020 and what Jim Ryan said. And there's also a little interview right here too. Let's go ahead and pull this up and let's get right to it. I don't know if you guys remember, there were some things that they were promising, like, from the ground up games. Though we did get a few, but not fully. And people were making fun of Xbox because they went full cross-platform. Obviously, they had no exclusives. PlayStation 5 launch was easily better, no competition. I didn't like how they did that pre-order though. They dropped it out of nowhere, and you didn't get like a solidification, kind of like what Microsoft did. So that screwed up some people's chance to camp. It was just randomly dropped out of nowhere. But right here is where Jim Ryan said, and let's get right into this.
Introducing a major console platform in the midst of a global pandemic is not an experience that I ever plan to repeat ever again. It's been quite something, but I am so proud of the way that the teams at PlayStation have stepped up throughout all this turmoil. And the way that they've worked is kind of witnessed by the fact that we will launch in 2020 in the midst of this pandemic with more PlayStation 5s than we launched PS4 in 2013.
True, they did do that, and they looked forward to that. And remember, yeah, this did launch during the pandemic. People were worried about stock. That was happening with both.
I've done all of these launches since right at the start. This is the most extraordinary of them all by quite some margin. Immersiveness has definitely been one of the mega trends in the gaming industry over the last 10 years or so, and immersiveness can manifest itself in many ways. But I think platform level features like the ones such as 3D audio and such as the haptic feedback, when put in the hands of great game developers, are going to allow this phenomenon of immersiveness to be taken to the next level.
That's one thing I will give to them. When I have it right here in my hands too. Like, I tell you what, Microsoft has made so much improvements to their controllers that it was almost like you thought you couldn't like outdo it at that point. And then Sony came along with this DualSense controller and outdid them. Not only did it not need batteries, unlike the other one, but they've improved upon it. Everything was better. The haptic feedback was better. The touchpad integration is really good, but we'll get to that in a second, how that integrates with games and all that, which is actually really nice because this is also like having multiple buttons. And then you had the adaptive triggers, and you didn't feel like you had to spend so much to do that. The quality was good, and it didn't drift a lot compared to the Xbox controller. You had the speaker built in too. That was better compared to the PlayStation 4. Everything was just improved, and they were beating Microsoft at their own game at launch. So the controller was definitely better compared to what you got with the Series X. I thought the D-pad was too much loud and everything. And the immersive aspect that you had of combining that with your first-party games and exclusives was actually pretty nice. Everybody knew that. It was a good thing.
VR will represent a meaningful component of interactive entertainment. Will it be this year? No. Will it be next year? No.
And yeah, so let's talk about that, because this is the things that we were talking about 2020, what we're coming. VR, though, obviously it wasn't the way that it was, so he's mentioning that was a disappointment. Not because Sony wasn't talented enough, but because that market is just hard to tap into. It's just like the PC handheld market, you know what I mean? Where it's not easy. Valve even tried with their own Half-Life game. Sony pushed a lot of their resources into that, which I felt like could have been better going into first party. And I think they kind of realize that now, but it wasn't bad that they did that because somebody had to do it. They took the opportunity to take that chance. And honestly, I don't think they did a bad job. It's just that that's a tough market. Remember, Microsoft tried to do something called HoloLens, but they ended up canceling that because, once again, that type of stuff is not easy. So I don't think Sony necessarily failed at VR, but I think that they didn't really succeed either because it's just a tough market and it's way too early. And I think people want something where you can just put on some sunglasses and then things will be cool like that. All that other stuff, I'm not sure.
But will it come at some stage? We believe that yes, it will.
Yeah.
They're obviously looking to bolster their own first-party capability.
This is important because remember, this was part of PlayStation's response to things to think about Bungie down the line, which we think was a huge mistake. Compared to what's going on now, yeah, what's going on? You're supposed to be live service expertise too, right? And it's like, I don't see it though. You know what I mean? And Destiny 2 was just falling down. I don't know about Marathon. Arc Raiders look like it's dominating. Everybody always felt like Arc Raiders looks better. And it's just doing so well. She don't know a game's like that, but hey, it's doing fine. And it seems like Microsoft was making a huge step up here, though after the Halo delay, people were like, whatever.
And to that extent, this is a logical step for them to follow. From our own studios, we have Demon Souls.
That was good.
We have Spider-Man Miles Morales.
That was good. I got the platinum.
Waiting to hear from him. See who needs help.
And we have Sackboy.
The brave,
It was cool.
bold, heroic Sackboy.
And that's really reflective of not a big major acquisition, but of steady, thoughtful, constant, organic growth and investment in the studios. PlayStation believes in great games. It's particularly exciting when they're great games that we made ourselves. It has paid us big dividends over the course of the last few years, and we want that to continue. The larger proportion of the PlayStation community will be engaged with their PlayStation 4. And so, we have this huge responsibility to that community to ensure that they are really well served in terms of new games, new features, proper communication from us. And then in turn, they will hopefully upgrade from their PS4 to their PS5. Narrative-driven gaming experiences have always been a kind of unique strength of PlayStation. So there's this kind of synergy between technological progress and our great ability to tell stories. That's a trend that will only continue. And another reason it will only continue is that every time our studios do this, they get better at it.
So you saw that him talking about the PlayStation Collection falling over PS5, and they getting the PS5 upgrades as well too. Another thing that Sony did right off the bat, much better than Microsoft, is the next gen dashboard UI update. You felt like you got a next gen UI, a next gen interface. It was right there. It was smooth. It was crystal clear. It was better, and it was embarrassing Microsoft. And still to this day, it's like, you know what I mean? It's years later and you still haven't, you know what I mean? It's like, it's okay, but it's like Sony's PlayStation 5 dashboard interface was superior. It was, everybody knows this. So you had that going at the launch too. Everything was just better in that regard. They also, what I like to call, if we go down here, had the screen share, right? Not only did you have the screen share, but you had a full capability of being able to have a bigger aspect of it, of the share play. Then they were moving it to mobile and everything, just embarrassing them. They didn't have that either. The recording, getting on YouTube, going on Twitch, going in and making your own montages, that was just significantly better. Microsoft had stripped it down. PlayStation had recording up to 1 hour. You can consistently keep recording too. Even footage that you might have mentioned, you said, oh man, I've been doing this for 30 minutes. Well, you could backtrack to 30 minutes and say, record that last 30 minutes or that last hour. The recording system was better. The US system was better. The controller was better. They had exclusives. They had it going the right way. The only thing is that they were promising more from the ground up exclusives, but then they ended up being crossplay. That's the thing that they lied about that I didn't like. But yeah, accessibility was better. The SSD was embarrassing. Microsoft's SSD, they were outperforming them aligned in every game. The PlayStation 5 was outperforming. Mark Cerny was being praised for doing the right thing with that. You know what I mean? So in that sense, it was like, what did Microsoft really have besides the Game Pass, which we all loved, and playing some of those games at higher settings compared to the Xbox One X, which was still a good console. And then in 2021, it says right here, the first major PlayStation 5 system update with cross-generation share play, enabling PlayStation 5 players with PlayStation Plus memberships to virtually pass the controller to friends using PS4. I don't know if you guys remember that, but you can do that and still share your screen. That was cool. And a lot of people were doing that. You had M.2 SSD storage expansions, giving people more opportunities or more options to be able to expand it. Then you have PlayStation 5 game captures through the PlayStation app to where you could be more synced with that, which I thought was pretty cool. So they were expanding upon the experiences. There were a couple games coming out as well. Microsoft was still behind. Sony was dropping games like Ratchet and Clank and all that, and they were still winning in that regard. Microsoft just had a really good drop of like Outriders on Game Pass, but I felt like still at that time, PlayStation was still giving you that next-gen experience, whereas Microsoft was still like still playing that cross-gen game in a sense to the degree of like, I'm still waiting on this next-gen experience. You didn't even have your big Halo. They got delayed. You had to wait all the way till next holidays to get Forza and Halo, which Halo was still incomplete. There was no Forge or none of that. So Sony was still dropping games, but at that time, Microsoft made a little bit of a pushback with Forza and Halo dropping at the time with the 299 Series S entry and easy, cheap Game Pass that you can get right on there and get them. So that was nice, but other than that, Sony was winning consistently. Then in 2022, we saw Sony come out with VRR because Microsoft had that, but they had implemented that into as a software update, which was nice. PlayStation Plus got changed around. PlayStation Now too got transformed to compete more with Game Pass, and they introduced that essential, premium tiers and stuff like that. Whereas Plus was kind of like the basic tier. Like I said, VRR was very nice. A lot of people were happy about that. If you see down here, introduced 3 new tiers of services, offering hundreds of games in the game catalog, extra members, deluxe, and premium, as well as classic game catalog for premium members. They're also working on improving their cloud at that time too. Then you have PlayStation 5 personalization expanded further into the new Galaxy. They were giving you more controller colors, which, that stuff is cool. Microsoft does stuff like that too. And then Sony started to work on their own type of elite controller, which was actually coming around the corner. VR2 was coming around the corner as well. They were saying, be patient, VR2 is around the corner. And then if we remember going back a little bit over here, you had, let's see, PlayStation 5, 2022, first party games. Sony had dropped, what was it that they had dropped? Oh yeah, Horizon, God of War Ragnarok, Gran Turismo 7 were huge drops. And then we're sitting over there looking at Microsoft, what are you doing, man? Where's your games at? You know what I mean? They didn't have anything. Once again, they were just getting completely embarrassed. Sony was outselling them. The gap started to widen even more. PlayStation was still not a letdown. It was still the experience that you were kind of looking for, but you were hoping for certain games to not be cross-generation, but they still were running really well. And Microsoft was being more and more left behind. They were not able to keep up. They were being embarrassed. Sony had 3 huge games dropping right there. 90-something meta, close to 90 meta, and GT7 not hitting what you wanted to hit, but it still was good in that sense. And then, we had Returnal not too long ago before that as well. But this is just to update things so we can know what the hell's going on here. So like I said, by that time, Sony was having some games out, right? My thing is, though, like I said, you promised me the cross-gen aspect. Sorry about that. We'll get to that some other time. Now, going into 2023, they launched the VR. Did that work out the way you think it would? No. But it was still nice seeing that Sony was kind of pushing for something. They didn't go for the handheld aspect because they knew what happened with the Vita. We remember what happened. So with the VR2, you thought things were going to be taken to the next level. We can go ahead and get some nice elevator music here. I know some guy came in my comment and said, nice elevator music, bro. That was kind of funny. Discord chat got implemented, but we know that was coming to Xbox too. But Sony, once again, was getting ahead. They were getting partnerships. They were still outperforming them in certain things. And it was like, man, what's going on with this? Well, I think it also has a lot to do with the OS and Linux and all that. We'll get to that some other time. Then PlayStation Portal Remote Play. Here it goes. This entered the scene. Redefined Remote Play now accounting for over 50% of all PS5 remote play sessions, surpassing streams through mobile, PC, PS4, and PS5 consoles combined. It's so funny how they updated that recently today. So that was coming in along the scenes as well. They didn't want their Vita aspect. You knew what was going on with Nintendo. They were dominating. So this gives people a sense. And then they introduced a DualSense Edge wireless controller, our first high-performance, ultra-customizable controller, and the Access controller, a controller kit designed to make gaming more accessible. This is where they came along with that. So Sony was actually still, like I said, they were just doing all the right things that it took to just win that war, which was kind of automatically over with anyway with that carryover, but they were making sure to keep it down. And then they had cloud streaming access for PlayStation 5 games. Just to tell people they were ahead of Microsoft because they were having better quality at that time. Brought new options for PlayStation Plus premium members to stream supported PS5 digital games from game catalog, game trials, and purchase from the PlayStation Store on their PS5 console. Additionally, we released a new line of audio products. And then they ended up coming out with that Pulse wireless headset, which was actually pretty cool in early 2024. So in 2023, they came out with a lot of things here. This was the beginning of this. People were complaining about this. It wasn't at the stage it needed to, but as we know, over time, things start to get better. We see a family aspect happening here, and you can see Valve kind of aligning and trying to do the same thing. So 2024 is when things get interesting. Okay, so 2024 started off very well. We've seen games like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Stellar Blade, Rise of Ronin, Grand Blue Fantasy Relink. They were coming strong. I was like, okay, Sony is consistently doing very well. I was happy at the beginning of 2024. Then you had Community Game Help, Welcome Hub, Battery Widgets, PlayStation 30 anniversary stuff coming out. We saw those games, they were doing very well, right? Empowering the players and communities. But then, like during that time too, people were getting mad because they were putting their games on PC. People were not happy about this. They were wanting Sony to stay exclusive to the PlayStation, but they were branching out on PC during those times. You know what I mean? Things started to become more and more closer to PC. People were thinking that. I didn't have a problem with that. They were testing the waters. There's nothing wrong with that. The ecosystem was still healthy. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But there's people that did not like that. That's where I didn't have a problem with PlayStation. I was still okay with Sony at this point. And then you see them having the PS5 Pro being announced. Then people making up all that grift, 32 teraflops, all that type of stuff, 4070 performance. And we got into our content with that. As you guys know, I started my channel in 2024. So it hasn't even been 2 years in February. So that's where it'll be my second year. And I was started off playing some of these games. So I started off streaming on PlayStation when I started my channel. But yeah, they had announced that this year. Microsoft said they weren't going to do that. Phil Spencer said it wasn't necessary, which is a good thing they didn't because they wouldn't have done well. And then there was more personalized aspects coming. And then towards the end of that year, we saw all these cancels come out of nowhere because of that live service. And this is where things started to go south, and I started to get mad. And then Sony was doing things I just did not like. Then they announced the PS5 Pro, and that was beta testing. PSSR was having issues. I started doing the comparisons around that time. All these games were just not going the way we wanted. We realized there were certain windows missing with Naughty Dog and everyone else. This is where we started to worry about PlayStation, where they're going to Don Matrick their brand. Obviously, they can't kill it like that. But Jim Ryan just went off the well. People were leaving. Sean Layden obviously wasn't there. Shuhei Yoshida wasn't there. Jim Ryan had to step back. This was like, a little bit earlier in the year. And things were just not going well. We had to get new guys up in there. And we were worried about PlayStation, right? Things were just going bad. But the beginning of the year, those games were fine. And they launched Spider-Man 2 at the end of that year. And that was the only game they had after that, after all the money hats and exclusive games. Then going into next year, which is this year, we had the 5th anniversary coming in. More cancels came along. This was the beginning of this year. Remember this. Things were going crazy. We thought Microsoft had a pro-consumer push going. People were getting disappointed in Sony. Felt like they were losing their identity and losing their way. And then Microsoft said, hold my beer. Actually hold packs of beers for the rest of the year. You don't have to worry about anything. But still then, people were disappointed. It felt like you weren't getting that PS4 magic that you got compared to PS5 in that timeline. They missed their opportunity of almost 2 years to have a golden spree. Then Nintendo Switch 2 came along and it was too late. And now Sony's picking their stuff up back together. We see games drop. Ghost of Yotei dropped. Death Stranding 2 dropped before that. Phantom Blade is obviously into the next year. Then we get that big state of play and they have a lot of announcements coming all next year and things are looking a lot better. They start to recover. But it was rocky for a little bit in that 2023 second half of the year and the first half of 2025 this year. Prior to that, it was fine. Though there were some things that were disappointing people when it came to certain cancels. Naughty Dog missing their game. Days Gone 2 not appearing. More PC focus that were not making people happy as we were making fun of that, though we know that was funny. But all in all, PlayStation started to recover it a bit. It's getting back solidified. We got Nishino coming in with Totoki, and things are turning around. And, what I have to say is so far, I'm not totally let down by Sony's generation because I feel like there were some parts that were really still good. And then, of course, that middle ground, as we were talking about, was very disappointing. That did let me down because I kind of felt like they could have made that a lot better. But they didn't. And then now they're trying to recover now. But we still have to see what the hell else is coming around the corner with this live service stuff. They announced that Horizon game. And I don't like that they're skipping their own platform. But who knows if that's permanent or not. But overall, compared to Xbox, they didn't kill their brand. They're on their way to still get their 100 million sales. The Pro is getting improved. And we still got to see how these next few years go before I make my final decision. But for the 5 years, I have to say it's a mixed bag for me. I'm satisfied to a certain degree, and then I'm let down to a certain degree equally in certain ways. And I see them kind of trying to make up for that, and things are going forth. Some plus months were improved, but before that, we talked about that. Some plus months were just trash. It's like, what is this? You know what I mean? This is not good. So that was rocky as well, too. But other than that, they're doing better than Microsoft. But they still have these next 3 years to finish strong and make up for that and finish very strong. Obviously, from a hardware standpoint, no matter what PlayStation usually sells, But from a first party standpoint, I'm still not fully satisfied. No. From a third party money hat perspective, yeah, Sony's good at that. But for first party, I would like to see them do a better job and finish off this generation very strong like they did with PS4. And that's kind of like my highlight of the first 5 years of PlayStation. Like I said, the UI is good. I liked everything they've done. But I did not like the leadership of Jim Ryan. I did not like how he cut off Japan and how he imbalanced the PlayStation base and almost drove it off a cliff, gash, nitro rush, you know what I mean? With those troll sunshade glasses on. You guys know, you've seen the meme. But other than that, I mean, it looks like Sony is getting their shit together. They're turning things around. And these new leaders know what they're doing. They branched out and put Helldivers 2 on Xbox. They did some things, you know what I mean? They turned things around. Whereas Microsoft just literally just went straight into the grave the second half of the year. So there we have it. I mean, I have to say, like, right now, Sony is trying to work its way into becoming a PlayStation that people want to finish this generation strong for the next few years. Next year's looking pretty good, and I'm pretty sure we got even more announcements. So let me know what you guys think about this video. This is my 5-year update on PlayStation 5. It's not a letdown, but it's not amazing either. And there were some moments that were really good, but it was too rocky. So we need to do 2026, 2027, and 2028. We need that to be really good and competing with how good Nintendo's about to be doing, because they're going to be coming hard. You know what I mean? Xbox is out the race. We see the Steam machine coming in, but that's not going to really do anything. You know what I mean? That's an optional aspect, kind of like the Steam Deck. So that's not bothering Sony. What Sony's problem is themselves, just like what Xbox's main problem was themselves. So hopefully this leadership continues to do what they need to do and strengthen the PlayStation brand and finish this generation very strong. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. All right, y'all. Peace out. Have a great day. And if there's anything you want to add in, go ahead and add it in. Later, y'all.